Welcome to week 4 of the Mountain Valley News High School Pigskin Preview. I'm Monk Blevins, and this is Logan Wright, and we're back this week to talk a little bit of high school football. Logan, it was another exciting week of high school football for us, wasn't it?
And college football.
Absolutely, that's right, high school and college.
All right. I'd like to go ahead and give a big congrats to the Ider Hornets. They're our Mountain Valley News Team of the Week. They beat Gaston 17-14 in overtime. And we'd like to send another congratulations to Dallas Reed of Collinsville. He had 111 all-purpose yards, and that gave him the honor of being our Mountain Valley News Player of the Week.
Yeah, congratulations to Ider and to Dallas Reed, man. I tell you what, this Ider Hornet team, they keep finding ways to win. And Collinsville, Dallas has had a great season, and he just continues to seem to get better and better each week. So congratulations to them for being the Mountain Valley News Team of the Week and Player of the Week. Well, let's talk a little football here. Man, there were some exciting games last week. I tell you what, the first game we'll talk about is Collinsville. They played Holly Pond last week, and they won that game 32-6. Grant Jones, the quarterback for Collinsville, he was 10 for 11 for 60 yards. I mean, this Collinsville team, they seem like they just keep getting a little better each week. And, Dallas Reed, just like we talked about, he had 5 receptions for 59 yards, and he had 52 yards rushing. And then Preston Hamby also had 42 yards rushing. This Collinsville team, we've talked about, man, their massive offensive line. So, if you're going to have to run the football, man, you want to run behind somebody like Collinsville. So, boy, I tell you, they've got a big line. I'm very impressed with their offensive line. So,
you talk about the stats as far as the quarterback goes, 10 for 11. That is amazing stats for a quarterback, and I'm sure that huge offensive line helped him out a lot. That definitely had to help. And they were actually our Mountain Valley News Team of the Week, or Game of the Week last week, correct?
Absolutely. Yes, that was the Game of the Week. And, congratulations to Collinsville. I know that was a big region win for them. And, of course, we talk a lot about Coach Willingham, and he does a great job, and he's a great guy. And, we talk about him sandbagging, and I like to pick on him a little bit, but he has done a great job at Collinsville. And, they continue to improve. He did say they still are having some turnovers, doing some things, keep turning the ball over and having penalties, but, they are playing better. So, I think we'll see them get better as the season goes on. Next team we want to talk about is Crossville Lions. Man, we talk about this Crossville team and being in 4A and their schedule is just brutal. They faced a Hoax Bluff team who was always pretty good, and they got beat 27-13. But they played a good game. Actually, I think at one time it was even tied up at halftime. So this Crossville team, they have a chance to win, and man, it seems like each week they play good, but they just can't finish the game. What do you think? I mean, what's your thoughts on this Crossville team?
Crossville, I know they had a rough season last year, and we always talk about how tough that 4A region is. You never really have an off week. You don't have one of those weeks where you can kind of sit back and look to the next week and kind of focus on yourself to improve. But I think they're improving steadily, and sooner or later, all cylinders are going to start clicking for this Crossville team. It might not be this week or the next week, but sooner or later. You said they played a very, very tough Hoax Bluff teams, as Hoax Bluff teams usually are. There's no shame in a loss to Hoax Bluff. I mean, they're a great team. And it is good that they had the game tied at one point because that shows how much they're improving. But I look for them to really do something later in the season.
Yeah. One thing I know, they're struggling with their running game. Their passing game seems to be doing really good. Quarterback Gannon Pointer, he had another great night, and Blanton Jones had 9 receptions for 124 yards. But, Coach Cloud keep talking about the running game, how they've got to get their running game going to be able to win some of these games. And I think that's, they're lacking a little bit in their running game right now. But, Coach Cloudus has done a great job, and, they'll get better. And, I think you'll see them improve each week. And, it's just tough when you're in this region and in 4A and the teams they have to play. It's hard to tell that you may be improving, but I think we can see by stats that they are getting better each week. So, hope maybe this week, they got a tough game this week, but I think we'll see them keep improving as the season goes on. Our next game we want to talk about, or the next team we want to talk about is the Ider Hornets. Man, what a great game that was. They beat Gaston 17-14 in overtime, actually. And I tell you, this Ider team, they keep finding ways to win. Coach Tinker just he keeps letting them, putting them to the grindstone, man. They run the ball down your throat, and this week they had a tough game, and Gaston was ranked 5th in Class 2A, and Ider found a way to beat them in overtime. So Braxton Laster and Devin Dobbins and Jarrett Palmer again all had great games, and the game was 14-14 in overtime. They actually caused a turnover in overtime and recovered a fumble, and then they kicked a 22-yard field goal to win the ball game. So, congratulations. Again, Ider was our team of the week, but they just keep finding ways to win. So, what's your thoughts on Ider and the way they just keep,
I think Coach Tinker has this team exactly where he's wanting them. You look at Ider teams in the past, their record is so much better than they have been previously. I know they had a great record last year, but I think this year they'll actually be better than they were last year. I mean, he has his team clicking on all cylinders. This offense runs the ball as well as any offense I've seen. I've actually got the privilege to watch them play, and I mean, it's like a well-oiled machine. Everybody goes where they're supposed to. You have offensive linemen working their way up to backers, which is a very hard thing to do, and the running backs are finding holes, and they're hitting them hard. And this Ider team is one to watch out for. I'm telling you, I believe they'll make a playoff run, but not only that, a deep playoff run if they keep improving the way they have been.
Yeah. Well, they've got a tough game this week. They're facing the Fife Red Devils, who are coming off of a big win over Section after taking a heartbreaking loss at Cleveland last week. And but I tell you what, this Fife team, we've talked about it. We can't count them out on a state championship run. I think this team has still got a chance of going a long way in the state playoffs. And the Kilpatrick kid, man, he just keeps trucking. He had 3 touchdowns in the game against Section. Seth Benefield had a 59-yard touchdown pass to Kyle Collins. Peyton Anderson picked up a fumble, run it back for a touchdown. He ran for a rushing touchdown. So he just keeps putting these players in. You think, man, they're losing players. Players getting hurt, but they seem like they just keep sticking another one in there, and he just picks up right where the other one left off at. So, talk to us a little about Fife and what you think about this team.
Fife, they're called the Big Red Machine, and that's what they are. That offense is just amazing. They don't have very many plays. I know they run a lot of them out of different formations, but those few plays they do have, all of them work. I mean, I got to go to the game Friday night against Section. They were scoring anywhere they wanted to. I mean, they were up the middle, around the end. They had a passing touchdown, which is very unusual for Fife.
Yeah.
But seems like they just reload and they just keep going. I mean, talk about Kilpatrick. He's got to have the best balance of any running back I've seen. I'd love to see his yards after contact chart. Because all these runs, he's breaking 3 or 4 tackles a run to get in the end zone.
Yeah. Well, the next team we want to talk about is the Fort Payne Wildcats. Man, I've talked a lot about Fort Payne this year and the job that Coach Paul Ellis has done at Fort Payne. And, man, they put a whipping on Brewer this week, 48-0, shut them out. And, we can't say enough about Desmond Turner. He rushed for 137 yards on 13 carries, and man, this kid can get after it. Of course, he was hurt a lot last year, and I think that hurt Fort Payne. But man, if he can stay healthy, we talked about this. I think this Fort Payne team is the real deal. And they started out the ball game. Maddox kid picked off an interception and run it back for a touchdown, and then after that they just started feeding the ball to Desmond Turner, and he had a great game. Actually, they did get their passing game going this week. They had struggled a little. Tyler Ellis, he's a 10th grader, but he was 9 of 15 for 189 yards, and so he had a great ball game too. So, but this Fort Payne team, I tell you, I'm very impressed with them.
Their running game is amazing. You talk about Dez. He's got to be the fastest running back from around here. I mean, when this kid gets in the open field, nobody is catching him. They've already got the points up on the scoreboard before he crosses the goal line. I mean, he's got to be one of the fastest players in general I've seen coming from around this area. And I talked a little bit last week about that Wildcat formation. Nobody's been able to stop it. I mean, it's pretty simple. He's just getting behind the center, taking the ball, and running for 4 or 5 yards at a time. And that kills defenses when you have a running back that's able to do that. And that's got to help the coach out a lot.
Yeah, another player that Fort Payne has is the King kid that plays wide receiver, and I'm telling you, if Ellis can get the ball to him, this is another one, man. He can roll now, and he had an 80-yard touchdown reception in this game, and so Fort Payne's got a lot of weapons. Their defense is playing great. Their defensive backs. I think that's the third or fourth interception they've had this year, and they just keep getting after it. They've got a really good football team. Of course, this week, man, they've got a tough ball game. They're going to be traveling down to Albertville, and Albertville's undefeated 4-0 for the first time. I think this is the first time they've been 4-0 since 1998. And Coach Pruitt, former Plainview coach, he's doing a great job down at Albertville. And, man, this is going to be a great ball game to watch. And, I'd love to travel down to Albertville to watch this game. I think this one will be a great football game. So, our next game we're going to talk about is Geraldine versus Brindley Mountain. Geraldine finally got that first victory this week. They have played really good, but they have played some tough teams. Of course, they opened up with Fife, and then they had to travel over to New Hope. And so they finally got that first win against Brindley Mountain this week, and I know they're excited about their first win. So what do you think about this Geraldine game?
Geraldine, they finally had a ball bounce their way. I know they played, I believe it was Pisgah last week, and they ended up winning very, very close to the end. And it seems like, I believe they picked up a fumble, is that right? Or they blocked a punt?
Yep.
It's always good to have something like that happen in your favor, and it really helped them out, and they were able to defeat the Pisgah Eagles. And I feel like Brindley Mountain's not going to be able to stop them this week. We talk about Geraldine, you automatically think of how big their linemen are. I know we got Ivan Benitez, I believe is his last name. That kid's a house, and he's a great offensive lineman. And I wouldn't mind. I'd run behind him. If I was the coach, I'd be like, just give it, go right behind him, because I don't see anybody pushing him out of the way.
Yeah, Stephen Hood keeps getting better each week. He had a 23-yard touchdown run, and you talked about the block punt for a touchdown. Thomas Willoughby picked that ball up and ran it in, and then he also had another touchdown. He ran the ball in from about 2 yards out for another touchdown for Geraldine. But this Geraldine team, even though they're 1-2, they're a good football team, and they're well coached. And you can't count Geraldine out in this region yet, I don't think. So it's going to be interesting. I think, like you said, I think this Brindley Mountain team, and it's going to be tough on them. Our next game is Plainview and the Plainview Bears, and they'll be traveling to Sandrock this week. Man, they traveled over to New Hope this week, and I tell you, it surprised me. After the big win New Hope had against Geraldine last week and beat them 55-21. I thought, man, this may be a tough game for Plainview. But I tell you what, the Plainview Bears hung in there. They lost the game 21-16, but they had chances to win that game. They seemed to figure out a few things, and they were running the ball better, and of course the quarterback, they had a freshman quarterback in Bagley Dukes was started at quarterback, and he had a good game from what I understand, but the Mueller kid had a 39-yard touchdown run, but of course they're going to be traveling to Sandrock this week, and anytime you play at Sandrock, man, that's tough. It's tough. If they were playing at home, I'd feel much better about it. But when you travel to Sandrock, man, it's always tough. Our kicker, he kicked a 21-yard field goal for Plainview, and so I think the Plainview team is getting better. I was talking to a couple of players this week, and they felt better about it. They said, they really worked hard last week and really got after it in this game. And I think you can tell by the score that they're improving. So what's your feel on Plainview?
Well, I think Plainview definitely surprised a lot of people last week. New Hope is probably the favorite to win that region, and they lost that game, I believe it was 5 as the spread on that, and nobody would have predicted that after getting beat by North Sand and Glencoe like they did. But they got something going. They started that rushing game. We talked about last week how they needed to get that rushing game going to kind of be in these ball games. Well, they started gaining more yards on the ground, so they were a lot closer in that game. I know Ben Williamson, he was hurt last week, so they had to have a younger kid step up in Bailey Dukes, and he did. He delivered in this game. And I hope Plainview continues to stay on this track, continues to get better, but they're playing a very good Sandrock team. I know Sandrock had a lot of injuries last week. I was able to go to that game, and I believe there was over 20 flags thrown that game, and it was crazy. It seemed like every play there was a flag being thrown, but a lot of their players were injured too, and they seemed like they were having some problems with conditioning. They had a ton of people going down with cramps, and it wasn't it wasn't a humid night or it wasn't hot, which is very strange for this time of the year to have players going down with cramps. And if Plainview keeps this one close, that could come and be a factor of that game.
Yeah. Well, our next game is we won't talk about, or the next team we won't talk about is the Sylvania Rams. You know, Sylvania traveled to Brindley Mountain this week, and they finally got that first win. You know, we've talked a lot about Sylvania and the coaching staff there, and you know, Caleb Roebuck, he had 3 touchdowns, rushed for 215 yards in this game. I tell you, this kid is the real deal. And you know, Hunter Miller had a touchdown for Sylvania. And I tell you, this Sylvania team, you know, I think, you know, we've talked about this. You know, they've had some turnovers and missed tackles and just different things going on. But sounds like they got on track this last week. And, you know, look for this Sylvania team to improve. I mean, each week, you know, they've got better. And I think you're going to see that they're going to, you know, it's getting this first victory behind them. You know, we've talked about this with all these teams. Getting that first win is huge. It's a huge thing. If you can get that one behind you, you know, you build a little momentum and you feel good about how you played. And, you know, it can change the whole outcome. And, of course, you know, they're playing North Sand Mountain this week, and we talk about getting momentum going. You know, North Sand Mountain came down to Plainview and beat them 9-0. And, you know, I don't know if a lot of people gave them much of a chance against Sandrock. But, man, what a ball game that was. And I think you covered some of that game.
I did. So. I got to cover the second half of that. And I don't know what Coach Monroe has told these kids from North Sand, but whatever it is working. Because they came off one of the biggest wins probably in North Sand history, beating Plainview. I believe it was the first time they've ever beat Plainview. And then he goes and he ends up beating Sandrock right after that. They won. The go-ahead touchdown was a twice-tipped pass that ended up in a North Sand wide receiver's hands, and he run it in for a touchdown to go up and win the game. And I know there were a lot of penalties, and there was a lot of injuries on both sides of that, but Coach Monroe pulled it out. And talk about Sylvania, Roebuck, he's a great running back, and for them to win this game, they're going to have to win the turnover battle.
Yeah.
I think whoever wins the turnover battle in this game is going to come out with this game.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. You know, again, talking about this North Sun Mountain team, you know, their defense is playing great too. I've been very surprised that their defense, and you know, just hearing Coach Monroe talk about the second half, and they pretty much shut down Sandrock in the second half, and so, you know, congratulations to this North Sand Mountain team. And, you know, we talked about you get that win and the momentum, and who knows what this North Sand Mountain team can do as the season goes on. Our next game is the Valley Head Tigers, and, man, you know, they faced a great Cedar Bluff team. You know, this Cedar Bluff team is probably one of the better 1A teams in our area, and you know, man, they put a whipping on Valley Head. It's 55-0, and you know, I just listened to Coach Graham talk about the game. He said, man, they were Cedar Bluff was physical, and I think they really beat up Valley Head. And you know, Valley Head's going to have had a lot of injuries. You know, of course, and they can't afford injuries. Mm-hmm. You know, they've got 24 players, so man, that's tough on Valley Head. So you know, I hope some of those players get healthy this week. They're playing Galesville, and I think they got a chance of winning that game. But man, I tell you that, you know, facing a team like Cedar Bluff, and we talked about it, how tough they are already. And so, what's your thoughts on Valley Head, and what can they do to get back on the winning ways this week?
I think their coaches are definitely going to have to sit down and talk with his players. I've had the opportunity to watch Galesville play, and their defense didn't really seem that great to me. I know Eider put a hurting on them, and I feel like Valley Head can do the same thing if they get that rushing game going. That's one thing they're going to have to do is have to try to get those linemen back to backers and try to set up blocks, and they have to hit open holes when they have the chance.
Yeah. Well, you know, our next game is Section versus West End. When we talk about the Section lines, man, you know, you couldn't pick a worse time to have to play a Fife Red Devil team after coming off of a big loss like they took against Cleveland, and you know, I'd hate to be any team having to play Fife after their first loss in 17 games. But you know, they Fife put a pretty good whipping on Section. I think it's 49-7, and so this Section team, but they got a chance this week. You know, they're playing a West End team at West End. But they've got a chance to get back on the winning streak this week, and you know, if they're healthy and they can run the football, I think they've got a good chance this week. We'll see how that goes. Next team is New Hope versus Pisgah. You know, this game I think could be a really good game. New Hope comes in. We've talked about the Browner kid. Man, he is he is big. He's pretty fast, and he can sling the football. But not only do they have the great quarterback, they've got this great running back in the Cotton kid, and he keeps just improving each week, and he's one of those scat backs. He can go. So, what's your thoughts on this game, man?
With New Hope is definitely a dual threat with their offense. That's a great offense. I've had the opportunity to play against Browner, the quarterback, and he's a typical college prospect quarterback. I mean, he's a dual threat. He can run and he can throw. He's a big, tall kid. He's had a lot of success in his offense over the years, and he knows the offense in and out. And we talk about Pisgah. Pisgah struggled a little bit in the secondary, and I believe that's going to hurt them. I know they have their offense is starting to click, and Audie is the quarterback's name. He's been able to connect with a lot of wide receivers, and he's going to have to do that if they want to win this game. And the rushing game is going to have to pick up and be a little better than it usually is for them to win this game, because that New Hope, their defense is great too. I know we always talk about how good their offense is.
Yeah.
But their defense swarms to the ball, and they're very big on team tackling and stuff like that. So Pisgah's got a tough one out for him this week.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of Audie Smothers, he had a 99-yard touchdown reception to Levi Ellis in that game. So, congratulations to him. He is a tough quarterback. And, Pisgah can make a game out of this, and they are playing at Pisgah. But, it'll be interesting to see how this Pisgah team handles after coming off a defeat, how they'll handle this New Hope team. Our next game we're going to talk about, and we're going to jump into college here a little bit, is Ole Miss, and we're going to talk about Alabama, actually. Alabama comes in, and they beat Middle Tennessee State last week 37-10. Coker had another decent game. He wasn't quite as sharp as he was last week in the Wisconsin game, but he passed for 215 yards. Big Derrick Henry, man, what can you say about him? He had 3 touchdowns, and I think about 98 yards rushing. This Alabama team I think they are the real deal. I think they've got a chance of going a long way. So what's your thoughts on Alabama this week? And
I believe Alabama's D-line is going to have to continue to play like it has been. We talk about their front seven. It's probably the best front seven in all of college football. Passing game, it was a little under par last week. I know they were playing a junior college, but they're definitely going to have to step up with that. And we talk about their running game. Alabama has a very good rushing game, and their offensive line is very good as far as run blocking, but they're going to have to step up with some of their pass blocking, I think.
Yeah. I tell you what, this Ole Miss team they're going to be playing this week, man. They put up 76 the first week, and they put up 72 or 70 this week, and of course, they were playing some. They wasn't playing an SEC team, but they can light it up, and I think they're going to give Alabama a run for the money in this game. If there's a weakness in Alabama, it's their passing game or defensive. In passing, they seem to struggle in the spread offense and that type of thing. So that's going to be a great game to watch. Our last game we're going to talk about, we got Auburn going to LSU. Man. What a football game. I think you went down to Auburn and watched Auburn versus JSU, and I tell you what, Jacksonville State, man, they had the football game won. And very surprising. I know the people in Jacksonville are excited about the way they hung in with the number 6 team in the nation at that time. And so what's your thoughts being down there watching that ball game?
Well, I actually had the opportunity to be down there, and it was crazy. I mean, JSU fans were going crazy there. I know there's a lot of Auburn fans out there without fingernails right now because they've been chewing them off, but their quarterback played great. He's one of the better. He ran the quarterback read better than any quarterback I've seen in any college football. That's not just because in the OVC. I know he kind of controlled that Auburn defense. He did what he wanted to. I mean, they had success passing the ball. They ate him alive on a little quick slant route, and then that quarterback read, the rushing, Auburn couldn't do anything with them. And if JSU had made any of the 3 field goals inside the 30 they missed, that would have been a different ball game.
Yeah. The game, it was 27-20, and they beat them in overtime. Jeremy Johnson, quarterback for Auburn, he continues to struggle in some of his decision-making. Very talented guy, but, some of his throws, I think he's just, he's not really checking down and looking at all the receivers. He'll just lock in on one and throw it. And
tunnel vision.
Yeah. And so he's struggling a little bit on that. But, and, man, they face a tough LSU team this week. And so I tell you, if they're going to have to really improve this week in all areas of the football to be able to beat this LSU team, I think. So, It was a great week of football last week, and we've talked about all these games, and now it's time for us to pick them. And this week we've got our guest picker in. We've got the director of the Field of Dreams, Mr. Sammy Smith, and we're gonna have him to come on in here. How you doing, Sammy?
Doing great.
Good to be. I'm glad you're here with us today, and talk a little bit of football. And we're excited. What we do here is we're gonna go down the list here and pick the games. And since you're our guest picker, you're gonna get to pick first. So,
Oh, great.
the first ball game we're gonna be talking about, we got Cleveland versus Collinsville. Who you got in this one?
Collinsville started playing better late and playing pretty good, but Cleveland, I think, has just got too many horses for them. It's going to be Cleveland.
All right, Logan, who you got in this one?
Cleveland has been all over everybody they've played lately, and I feel like they're going to be too much for this Collinsville team.
Yeah, I'm going with Cleveland too. I tell you, this quarterback Cleveland has, man, he is the real deal, the Gillen kid, and Collinsville is improving, but I just think this Cleveland team is going to be a little too much for Collinsville this week. Our next game, we got Cleveland County going to Crossville. Who you got in this one, Sammy?
Well, I'm going to stay with Cleveland County. Crossville's getting a little better as the year goes along, but I don't think they're quite there yet.
Yeah. Logan?
We talk about Gannon Porter, their quarterback, how he's been stepping up, but I feel like this Cleveland County defense is going to be too much for him. That's what I'm picking.
Yeah, I'm going with Cleveland County too. I tell you, this Cleveland County team, they have always been a really good football team, and they've won the state championship a couple of times, and man, Crossville needs a win so bad, but I just don't see them winning this week. I'm going with Cleveland County too. Our next game, and man, I tell you what, this next game could be a great game. It's Ider versus Fife. Sammy, who you got in this one?
I'm telling you, Ider's going to have a really good shot at this because Fife's had so many injuries. They lose at least one or two players a week to injuries, but I don't think they're hardly ready for this one. I think Fife will pull it out.
Yeah. What about you, Logan? Who you got in this one?
We talk about injuries. Fife's secondary and their linebackers are basically all new right now. I mean, I know they have a great D-line.
Yeah.
I know Ider's offense has been clicking, but I still feel like Fife's going to take this one in the end.
Yeah, I'm going with Fife too. I think this Ider team, and I struggled on picking this one because this Ider team, I tell you what, I'm very impressed with Coach Tinker and the job he's done there. Of course, they're playing at Fife, and that doesn't help. But I just think Fife probably, I think they'll be a little too much for Ider this week. The next game we've got, and man, what a great football game this will be. Fort Payne is traveling down to Albertville. Who you got in this one, Sammy?
Well, I'm telling you, Fort Payne, they're pretty evenly matched. Coach Pruitt's got Albertville. They have bought into his system. They are playing great. They've got a top-notch running back, top-notch quarterback. Obviously, their defense is playing good under Coach Luke Pruitt.
Yeah.
And it being at Albertville, I'm going to give Albertville the nod on this one.
All right, Logan, who you got in this one?
I actually got the opportunity. I played under Coach Pruitt, and I know that he's going to have this Albertville team ready, but after watching this running back in Fort Payne, I feel like that offense is just going to be too much for Luke Pruitt's defense. I'm going to have to go with Fort Payne.
Well, and this is another one of those I've struggled and I've thought about it all morning. But I'm going with Fort Payne. I tell you, I just I'm very impressed with the job that Coach Ellis has done with this team, and Desmond Turner, he just keeps getting better each week, and I think it'll be a great game. And this is one of those, it can go either way, and it probably will come down to the last series who wins this football game. It'd be a great football game. But I'm going with Fort Payne. Our next game, Geraldine versus Brindley Mountain. Who you got, Sammy?
Hey, I know it's at Brindley Mountain, but Geraldine put it together last week, and I think they're coming home with a big W this week.
Logan?
I think Geraldine's going to take this one. Oh, they're got that momentum building after last week with a block punt, return for a touchdown, and that team's ready for another win. I believe they're going to get it this week when they play Brindley Mountain.
Yeah, I'm going with Geraldine too. I tell you, we talked about this. Getting that first win is always big, and I think now they've got a little momentum going, and I look for Geraldine to bring home a big victory this week. Our next game, Plainview versus Sandrock. What you got in this one, Sammy?
Guys, you alluded to it earlier that when you get off the bus at Sandrock, you're down 14.
Yes,
that's what we always like to say. But I actually have a feeling that this is the week Plainview puts it together. I'm going to take the Bears this weekend.
Logan?
Talk about Sandrock and how good their offense is playing. I know they have several running backs to interchange, and they have Caleb Kasinger at quarterback, and he's very good. He's been connecting with wide receivers. I feel like he's going to be too much for Plainview. I hate to say it, but I'm picking the Sandrock Wildcats.
All right, well, I'm going with the Plainview Bears again. I think after last week and the way they hung in with New Hope, I think this is the week they get that first victory, and they seem to have improved from week 2 to week 3, and I think week 4 may be the key. I think they'll get a victory this week, so I'm going with the Plainview Bears. Our next game, we got Valley Head at Galesville. Who you got in this one?
Well, it's at Galesville and Valley Head. You said had some injuries, but I'm still going to stay with Valley Head. I think Coach Graham's doing a pretty good job with them, and I think Valley Head will come out with a win.
Logan?
Well, I've got to see Galesville play, and I know that their defense, they don't have very much size, and I feel like Valley Head's just going to run all over them, so I'm thinking Valley Head.
I'm going with Valley Head too. I think Coach Graham will have them ready, especially after that big loss, and they're going to want to come back out and prove, hey, we're a better football team than what we played last week. So I'm going with Valley Head too. Our next game, Section versus West End. What do you got in this one, Sammy?
Well, I've looked at both teams. I hadn't got to see either one of them really play, but I've looked at what they've done this year, and it being at West End, I'm going to give them the edge. I'm going to go with West End.
Logan?
Talk about Section, their offense. You have Dusty Martin. He's a very, very good fullback. I mean, he gets yards.
Yeah.
He actually ran the ball pretty well against Fife. I know it didn't really show much. I know he plays middle linebacker, and he has to be tired toting the ball and trying to make every tackle on defense.
Right.
But I feel like Section's going to pull this one out.
All right. Well, I'm going with West End. I think I would pick Section, but since they're playing at West End, I'm kind of like Sammy. I'm going with West End at home on this one. Our next game, we got New Hope versus Pisgah. Sammy, what you got on this one?
Hey, guys, I'm telling you, I'm leaning towards New Hope winning the region this year, so I'm going to have to stick with them in this game. I know Pisgah is loaded with athletes, but they've got to get over that little edge of being the top team.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they get it done this week, so I'm going to stay with New Hope this week.
Who you got in this one, Logan?
This is a very hard pick for me. I think Pisgah has a possibility to win this game, and I think they're going to be in this game a lot closer than a lot of people think they will be. But I feel like Browner from New Hope, that quarterback, I mean, Pisgah's a little weak on secondary, and I feel like he's going to pick them apart. And I think this will be a fourth quarter decision, but I think New Hope's going to win this one.
Yeah, I'm going with New Hope too. I tell you, the Browner kid, man, he is tough, and this Cotton kid, the guy running back, I think the weapons are just a little too strong for Pisgah this week. So I'm going with New Hope in that one. Our Mountain Valley the Mountain Valley News game of the week is North Sand Mountain versus Sylvania. Who you got in this one, Sammy?
Well, I know North Sun Mountain's going on the road, but I saw them play Plainview on the road, and that doesn't seem to faze them any.
Yeah.
And Sylvania's yet to prove themselves really strong, so I'm gonna stick with North Sun Mountain this week.
All right, Logan, who you got?
Tell you, I picked against North Sand 2 weeks in a row, and I've lost 2 weeks in a row. So I'm going with North Sand this week, and hopefully I'll get this pick right.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go against you two this week. I'm going with Sylvania. I just and this is just a gut feel on my part. This North Sand Mountain team, like I said, I've picked against them 2 weeks and I've lost 2 weeks. But I'm gonna pick against them the third week, and hopefully this will be the week that I win it. So I'm going with Sylvania in the game this week. Our next two game, we got Ole Miss versus Alabama. Man, this is gonna be a great football game, and we talked about this with the spread offense and the points that Ole Miss can put up. It'll be a test for Alabama. So who you got in this one, Sammy?
Before they played Alabama, Middle Tennessee also put up close to 70 points the week before. And Alabama pretty much shut them down. We let it slip up a little bit. I just think Alabama's defense is going to be too strong. And if Coker, like I say, his timing's been off just a little. If he threw the ball just a little bit sooner, we would have some huge plays.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go with the Crimson Tide.
All right. Who you got in this one, Logan?
I see Alabama's defense taking over, and I think their secondary is going to be ready for this game. I hope they are anyway, and I feel like they're going to shut down Ole Miss's offense. I know they have a very powerful passing offense, but I'm going to have to go with Alabama. Roll Tide.
Yeah, I'm going with Alabama too. I think this Ole Miss team, like I said, they've put up 70 points in 2 games, but they haven't faced the defense like they're going to be facing this week. This front seven of Alabama's, man, they probably could be playing on Sundays if they wanted to be right now. And so I'm picking Alabama to win this ball game. And, of course, they got a little bit of revenge coming from last year. That's the only game they lost in the regular season. So that'll be a factor in the ball game too, I think. So I'm going to Alabama this week. Our last game, we got Auburn versus LSU. Who you got in this one, Sammy?
Well, I tell you, I'm leaning to LSU. I think Johnson just hadn't got it together yet. And I don't see him changing quarterbacks, so I haven't really seen anybody else step up that could step in there. Until he pulls it together, Auburn's going to struggle. And LSU's playing pretty strong right now, too, so I'm going to go with LSU.
Logan, who you got?
I tell you, I'd much rather see him play JSU again. I don't know about y'all, but I feel like LSU is going to be too much for him. I know typically when you talk about an LSU team, defense is really one of their strengths, and offense isn't one of Auburn's strengths right now. So I'm going to have to go with LSU Tigers.
Yeah, I'm going with LSU too. You know, Sammy talked about Jeremy Johnson, and well, I'll tell you, he has struggled. You know, he's thrown 5 interceptions in the first 2 ball games, and and Jacksonville State. You know, they moved the ball against this Auburn defense, and
Very well.
and I was a little surprised in the way they did move the ball, and I of course not taking anything away from Jacksonville State, they've got a great team. I think they were ranked 6th in the FCS division, and
They won the OVC last year.
absolutely. But LSU is going to give Auburn all they want.
JSU missed 3 field goals in that game?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
You know, with a Leonard Fournette in there, you might not have those field goals. You might have 3 touchdowns.
You're exactly
Or
right.
a good punt at the end of that game.
A good punt wins the game for JSU too.
So I'm going with LSU. I tell you, it's going to be another great week of football and high school football. And man, if you get the opportunity to go out to watch some of these games, I encourage you to get out, man. There are going to be some great games this week, and there's some great college games this week. So man, sit in your recliner and watch some of these college games. Get out and stand on the fence and cheer on your favorite high school football team. And, we'll be back with you next week, and we'll break down these games, and we'll talk a little more high school football. I'm Monk Blevins, and Sammy Smith and Logan Wright, man, and we hope you have a great week, and God bless each one of you.